I have seen her among a group of people she has never met before, doing the fake orgasm sketch from When Harry Met Sally. The following morning she'll ring around seeking reassurance that she didn't make an ass of herself. Sarah, if you have to ask, you know the answer. How delusional are you about your own sense of performance that you would think you could make a scene from a movie that was already unbelievably cringy a success at a party with people you don't know? I mean, it would seem that no one liked her because, as the book goes on to say, the Sun ran a telephone poll. Would you rather date Fergie or a goat? And 7-1 voted for the goat. Hello, how are you? Welcome to my channel. My name is Cheer Denise. Happy Monday. Hope you had a good weekend. We're going to keep going on in Entitled. That's the book about Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson. And in this episode, we're going to start talking about their divorce. So far they've been married this whole time. Even though it was a pretty loose arrangement by anybody's estimation, and they were mostly separated, they still had a lot to do with each other, and technically Sarah was still part of the royal family, but the Queen's done with it. You know, she's been bailing Sarah out of her financial difficulties for years now, paying off her debts, trying to keep the banks from just basically writing her off completely. But the Queen can't keep doing that. These shenanigans, this foolishness, that's Sarah's problem now. And so it's really time for Sarah to start taking some responsibility. She won't, but they're going to try to shove her towards responsibility by cutting her out of the family. This section is also going to be a little bit more about Andrew and what Andrew's been up to. His career is floundering, let me just say. And, you know, he's been sort of shoved along all this time, not surprisingly. He's like a C- student. You're not like the most grotesque soldier we have, but you're not doing well. You know, you're not somebody we want to give a lot of responsibility to. So it's getting to the point now where he cannot progress in his career. So they're going to have to try to figure out some work for him. I mean, it's all just very depressing, these two. But let's get started to see how the royal family is going to deal with this divorce, since it has finally happened. This first section is entitled Rupture. Through all of this, the affairs, the extravagance, the waste, the press attention, the globe hopping, the selfishness, the Yorks had contrived to remain married. Now the dam broke. The strain of it, all too much for the royal family. On March 17th, 1996, Andrew was told to divorce the woman he still loved. The Queen had finally lost patience with the Duchess, according to a palace insider. The public humiliation of her son capped by Sarah's behavior with Brian. It all had to end. Andrew was torn, believing their relationship could still be saved. But many felt Sarah was using him. She's very manipulative and can twist him any way she wants, said one official figure close to them both, putting it down to his naivete rather than stupidity. So many people have urged him to put his foot down, but instead of doing something, he just gets angry that the matter is even being raised. The well-informed journalist Anthony Holden revealed, dull, thick, couch potato, pro-am golf and Stallone videos, yawn, yawn. This is the message now coming from Sarah's camp about the man she once adored. Fergie thought she was marrying Warren Beatty, but found herself hitched to Mr. Blobby, with all the conversational spark of Nigel Mansell. The announcement of the divorce came on April 16th, while Sarah and the princesses were on a week's holiday at Patty McNally's chalet in Verbier, and Andrew was at Portland. She passed off the stipulation that she would lose her title of Her Royal Highness, a particular blow, as something that she had chosen to do herself. But according to Madame Vasso, I also knew that the claim that Sarah had chosen to drop the title, Her Royal Highness, had to be untrue. Whenever we spoke, she had always stressed how important being Her Royal Highness was to her, not least because she felt it gave her the respect she believed was due her as a member of the royal family. The press took the opportunity to reflect on the marriage, which had somehow lasted 10 years. The Mirror produced a special 8-page supplement, Worst Wife of Windsor, arguing that it might have all been quite different if she'd been able to combine the fun with hard work and duty. Instead, the paper characterized Fergie's brief career as Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of York, as, quote, a vulgar extended holiday, the embarrassments endless, each one more cringeworthy than the last. During 1987, she carried out only 55 public engagements, compared to the Princess Royal's 429. You guys, I underlined that bit. Can you imagine coming, because she's still relatively new to the family. In 1987, it's not like she worked really hard and then kind of petered off into just having a good time. She came in planning to have a good time and do nothing else. Only 55 public engagements? Meanwhile, Anne's over there doing 429? You gotta be kidding me. Sarah's financial position became even more desperate. made worse by the decision of the Manhattan company that had marketed her budgie products in shops and put the character on Fox television to file for bankruptcy protection in a legal ploy in a dispute over millions of pounds in royalties. She was owed over $4.6 million. Fox Children's TV network dropped Budgie from its 162 stations, and Bloomingdale's stopped selling it. Can you imagine the horror? You're owed $4.6 million, and then the company's like, yeah, but we're bankrupt. We can't pay. I would have a conniption. Compounding this, the Motor Neuron Disease Association secretly decided not to re-elect her when her term as president ended in September. According to a charity insider, the big companies, which people like us have to rely on for support, simply won't touch her. They don't want to be associated with someone with such bad press. The truth is that there is no longer any feel-good factor in being connected to the Duchess of York. Not surprisingly. She'd also gained a reputation for canceling trips for her causes at the very last minute, in the previous year and a half having mysteriously pulled out of visits to Chernobyl, Bulgaria, and India, despite weeks of preparation. Her PR, Kate Waddington, was deputed to ring journalists to insist that it was the Duchess's own decision to stand down, and Sarah herself later claimed, "Given my other commitments, I wanted to move on to a job with less administration attached, perhaps to establish a new research committee. I stepped down as part of a normal planned rotation." Is that right, Sarah? Dominique Prince, who helped set up the MNDA, had sat on the Corporate Advisory Council, recalled her unreliability, but perhaps pinpointed why some organizations were prepared to stick with the Duchess. She also got people like Robert Stigwood, the extremely wealthy Hollywood producer, to cough up a good deal of much-needed loot. I sat there and watched her do it. She promised that her then-estranged husband would attend a golf tournament and got pledges on the spot for some big hitters who made up the council. The year before, Sarah had been responsible for raising £200,000 of the $2 million plus of the income for MNDA, said Prince, whose organization had an annual income of just £2,000 when it started. So I suppose there was some reason, but she was able to get people to agree to things and to cough up money based on promises that she really couldn't follow through with. So maybe at the very beginning it would have been good to have her around, but in the long run, when she kept not being able to produce what she claimed she could produce, it would have been dangerous to have her around because it would have made the charity look like they couldn't keep their promises. If their president's over there being like, and I'll get my husband to come and play at these golf tournaments or whatever, and then she doesn't do it, and I just pledged all this money and I gave all this money to your charity because of that factor and that it doesn't come true, you can't keep playing that tired trick. They're going to realize everything she promises me isn't going to happen. So it's nice if Dominique Prince wanted to throw her a bone, but let's be real, man. It's almost worse to have somebody who's going to lie to your donors because you're not going to get them to donate again. And if she keeps going and getting all these heavy hitters to donate to you in the first place, well, then you just exposed all the heavy hitters to this fraud, and then you're not going to get them again. And then who are you left with? The people who can throw you $5 for your, brain neuron disease association? Anyway. Okay, this section's called The End of the Road. In November 1994, Prince Andrew had completed his first naval command, 18 months on HMS Cottesmore, a 60-meter minesweeper, part of the Tupperware fleet, built of glass-reinforced plastic to be totally anti-magnetic. Having been based in Scotland on fishery protection duties, it had allowed him to spend many weeks at Balmoral. Shortly before he left the ship for a couple of months' break, he appeared on a television program filmed in his cabin, which was filled with pictures of Sarah and by his children. "I want to go home and be with my family as much as I possibly can," he confessed, "but the ship, while I'm commanding, has to come first to a certain extent." He added, "I do not believe I've been given this command because I was the Duke of York, but I've been given it because, I hope, I'm a professional capable of doing it." Andrew spent the next few months holidaying and on royal duties, first flying with his PPO, Steve Burgess, to stay with Kyphon Simpson, a millionaire car dealer and golfing partner in Barbados at Crane House, which Simpson had purchased in the York's name, on the understanding that they could use it whenever they wanted. When Andrew returned to RNAS Portland, HMS Osprey, in February 1995, he did so as the senior pilot of 815 Naval Air Squadron, the only frontline squadron in the Royal Navy which operated the Lynx, and the largest squadron in the Fleet Air Arm, with 42 helicopters, 96 officers, and 420 sailors. As second-in-command and squadron executive officer, he was responsible for the unit's day-to-day function and collectively for the operational capacity of its headquarters. His boss, Martin Davis, found him to be a competent and skillful pilot who, quote, once he put on his flying suit, was focused and professional. However, the Duke was not a natural at attending to his management and organizing duties, and was easily distracted by events going on in his life. With his focus frequently on other matters, squadron members often had to seek guidance and direction elsewhere. He appeared to find great solace in the cockpit, where he knew precisely his role and was free from his other world. At 815 NAS, Andrew had also worked in maritime counterterrorism and special operations, particularly charged with protecting oil rigs, dealing with narcotics in the Caribbean, and ferrying around special forces. On one occasion, flying some snipers back from a shooting range over Norfolk, he had surprised his passengers by making an unexpected landing on the lawns of a stately home and suggesting they stop for a cup of tea. In the hallway, they were met by an elderly lady. It was the Queen, and she paused to consider their sniper rifles. "You can put those in there if you like," she said, pointing to an umbrella stand. Isn't that so funny? Can you imagine what the snipers must have felt? What a weird day, like a dream or something. Responsibility for Andrew's annual confidential report, known as an S-206, lay jointly with the squadron's commanding officer and the captain of RNAS Portland. They sought guidance up the chain of command since Andrew was at a critical point in his career. This was likely to be his final flying appointment, and a move into general service awaited. The appeal went all the way to the First Sea Lord, Admiral Jock Slater, who advised them to treat him as any other naval officer in a similar position. "Be accurate, but fair," might have summed it up. Perhaps ill-advised by the palace, Andrew had not been relieved of his royal duties while appointed to Osprey. Rather than focus on the job in hand, he appeared content to juggle commitments. He allowed his royal duties to creep up, often using them as an excuse to play golf. His staff in London repeatedly filled his diary, and he was reluctant to move away from that responsibility. In the end, it had to be removed from him in an attempt to provide focus on his naval career. However, the seesawing relationship with his wife remained a constant distraction during his time in 815 NAS. Davis felt he clearly possessed the character and skills to engage and entertain, since he did that as part of his royal role, but the Duke was unable to bring that into his relations with the sailors and junior officers. He tried too hard to be the senior pilot instead of bringing his own character and personality to the role. Davis had many conversations with him about presenting himself as the person he was, rather than what he thought he should be. Davis felt Andrew's final S-206 from the squadron, and his role as executive officer, perhaps provided the first accurate and true report he had received in the Navy. Quote, "The report lay bare his shortcomings in leadership and rather disorganized management skills. He remained a competent pilot throughout. It is unlikely that this one report alone halted his career pathway, as irregular reporting builds a picture, but it was a watershed moment which required a rethink of his next and subsequent roles." But the appraisal effectively did kill his career. From now on, jobs would be found for him, but he was going nowhere. Shortly after the final S-206 was submitted and doubt was being raised about Andrew's next appointment, Prince Philip paid an informal visit to the squadron to seek background to his son's pending change of direction. The obvious next step would have been command of a frigate, having been a warfare officer or first lieutenant, but the feeling was that Andrew had neither the abilities nor the desire to take this path. In early 1996, he'd been tipped as second in command of the warship HMS Cumberland, commanded by his brother-in-law, Captain Tim Lawrence, but the expected move never happened. At the end of July that year, it was announced that Andrew, who had considered resigning in 1988 to save his marriage, would leave the Navy in 1999 after 20 years. He had been passed over for promotion to commander 3 times and had been told by Jock Slater that he had no future in the senior service. His Falklands commanding officer, Ralph Wykes Sneyd, felt the Royal Navy found itself in a difficult position. It was quite clear to all, were he not a royal, his performance and potential did not warrant him being promoted to commander. Effectively, his career was over. He was unsuited to be second in command, let alone command a frigate or destroyer. Part of the problem, it was claimed, was Andrew's lack of a university degree, that he had no aptitude for maths, that his royal duties had interfered with his career progression, and that the Navy had lost 30% of its manpower in the previous 6 years, further reducing opportunities for promotion. A Buckingham Palace insider explained, "Technology in the Navy is getting ever more complicated. You have to be able to understand very sophisticated equipment. But this is all a little bit beyond him." However, one of the Duke's superior officers has questioned this. "I never detected that any lack of math skills was causing concern in my time with him, and the Sea King Mark V was a pretty sophisticated aircraft. The problem was lack of application in keeping himself up to speed with his professional skills and knowledge, as well as lack of attention to fulfilling his duties properly. It appeared that Andrew had reached the summit of his naval career, and he would progress no further. Any further appointments would simply be a matter of finding him a role until he was retired. As an MOD officer put it, Andrew is a good, solid officer, but in reality, he is no more than that. That's not very good. But you know what I think? Ultimately, I think that if Andrew had been able to communicate with his men and to interact with them as one human would to another, if he could have sort of joked around with them and figured out a way to be their leader, but also be relatable to them, I think they would have kept him. Regardless if he was not the most amazing leader, part of leadership is making men want to follow you. So you could technically on paper be not the best, but if everyone has your back, they want officers like that. I think that his proficiency and maybe his know-how about how to manage people could have been overseen. Some of the bureaucratic elements of managing a group like that could have been meted out to other people if the people had liked Andrew. But Andrew didn't make himself likable. And it would have been even more annoying if you knew he possessed the skills. I think this line right here is very telling. Where it says here, Davis felt he clearly possessed the character and skills to engage and entertain since he did that as part of his royal role. But the Duke was unable to bring that into his relations with sailors and junior officers. He didn't think that they were worthy of his banter with them. And I think that ultimately that's why they wanted to get rid of him. All his other issues could have been dealt with. But if you make people feel like there's always this distance between you, and not because he is the officer or the leader in charge, but because you aren't worthy of having a conversation with, we have issues. Obviously, in any military organization, there has to be rigorous agreement to the hierarchy. Everybody knows that there is ranks and you have to honor those. But that doesn't mean that your officers aren't kind to you. Or it doesn't mean that your officers can't talk to you man to man. I've seen this done well and I've seen it done poorly. And the guys who can talk to their inferiors, I guess you would say, but still make them feel seen and like get a laugh with them, the men will follow those guys anywhere. Andrew just thought he was above it. And that's ultimately, I think, where his career floundered. Okay, this next section is entitled Cracking Up. We're back to Sarah. Sarah continued to flex her financial independence, not surprisingly. In June 1996, it was announced she had joined the books of New York's Next Management and would be charging about £25,000 a time to promote products at corporate events. The same month, Simon & Schuster announced it had bought a Memoir. The reputed advance varied from £800,000 to £1.5 million, with editor-in-chief Michael Korda proclaiming, "We are delighted to have this unique opportunity of publishing a book in which the Duchess of York describes herself and her experiences as they were, rather than as they have been portrayed." It was revealed that she had also told the publishers, in a classic Sarah move, "See me write and I'll get you Di as well." And they had offered her another $1 million if she could persuade Diana into doing a book. She's always bringing in other members of the royal family in order to get what she wants, but she can't ever see that through. Anyway, a Simon & Schuster executive claimed, "The Di idea just grew out of the discussion. We explained we would expect Fergie to deliver on account of her close friendship with Diana. She then said maybe she could get Diana to write her own story for us." Sarah had been paid £50,000 for 2 days' work promoting Rupert Murdoch's Foxtel cable network, and there were reports she was in discussions to teach Americans proper etiquette, such as how to use the correct cutlery and how to make polite conversation with a royal. Yeah, because we all find ourselves in that situation. Who in their right mind would ever have hired her? It'd be more of a joke. Who's going to Sarah Ferguson at this point to be like, "Could you teach us etiquette?" We'd be better off going to Skid Row and finding somebody who can teach us etiquette. She signed with Paris Match, a magazine she had sued 4 years earlier for publishing the toe-sucking photos, to interview 6 celebrities at £10,000 per article, and with Olympus to advertise a new camera for $32,000. It was announced Revlon would pay her $1 million to launch the Duchess range of perfumes, though the deal was subsequently canceled. See, this is what I'm telling you. She has no sense of self-preservation. Why would you march yourself back to the magazine that had done you so dirty by publishing the toe-sucking photos and be like, I'll work for you guys too. I'll interview these 6 different celebrities and you can pay me 10,000 pounds per article. I mean, I know that you completely debased and humiliated me by publishing those private photos, but, whatever. It's like, girl, pick yourself up and stop just debasing yourself all over the place. This is a person who would get a little dirty and then climb down into the hole and swim in the mud. This is a person who just does not understand the idea that she has dignity and worth. This is a very complicated person. How could you go back to the very people who had so publicly and globally humiliated you and work with them for the, quite frankly, paltry sum of $10,000 per article? I mean, 10,000 pounds is, I guess a nice bit of money, but that wouldn't be enough for me to go back to the people who had hurt me so badly. The autobiography was only the first part of the plan. As part of a strategy masterminded by some American tycoons, Sarah was now being promoted as a shrewd businesswoman, author, and chat show host. They wanted her on Oprah Winfrey, David Letterman, and Diane Sawyer, all aimed at exposure, which would generate lucrative endorsement and merchandising spin-offs. Howard Rubenstein, her PR advisor, threw a lavish party for her to meet New York's movers and shakers, including Al Lippert, founder of Weight Watchers. It was an introduction which was to transform her life. She also had help developing her business activities from the Hong Kong businessman David Tang. In September 1996, she flew, traveling as the Countess of Inverness, to Hong Kong and then for a picnic on the Great Wall of China for the opening of her China Club in Beijing. Annual membership to this club was £12,865. Who's paying that? Who's like, I want to be part of the Duchess's club? Can you even imagine? What is she thinking? How does she even come up with this stuff? I'm going to go to China, and I'm going to have a club, my club, and if you want to get in, it's over £12,000 for membership. Who's just dying to be friends with the Duchess or to be associated with her name? That you would join her club? It's not like she's there every day, in China of all places. What does she think the Chinese need with her? Among the 68 people also flown in were the actors Michael Caine and Kevin Costner. The American movie star became the subject of her next obsession. What a surprise. After she had plagued him with raunchy phone calls, he reputedly told friends, she's a woman crying out for love. It was also reported that she had called the New York Times to deny that she was suicidal, and a royal aide was quoted saying, we've gone beyond chronicling the number of the Duchess's indiscretions. We're into a situation where we must monitor her moods carefully. She's very disturbed, and we are under instructions to keep an eye on her. Alan Starkey remembered Sarah once telling him, deciding whether to stay or leave Andrew, if it weren't for the children, the only answer would be to kill myself. She said this not in a mood of depression, as she had many times in the past, but rather as if she had suddenly come to a clear and logical conclusion. It was a sentiment she was to repeat to me many times, he said. The Duchess continued to live beyond her means, employing a staff of 17. Mind-blowing, you guys. That included a cook, a driver, a maid, a butler, a dresser, a nanny, 3 secretaries, a personal assistant, a lady-in-waiting, an accountant, an accountant's assistant, 2 gardeners, a flower arranger, and a dog walker. Who has money problems up to their eyeballs and goes, you know what I need around here? I need somebody to arrange the flowers. I need a full-time flower arranger. Also a dog walker, because none of these other people I've employed are able to walk the dog also. There's nobody who has extra time on their hands who could walk the dog, least of all me. I have all these people doing all my work, but I can't walk the dogs, please. I mean, could you even, at her financial straits, I would even say that having a cook is out of control. Just, you can't afford a cook. If you don't know how to cook yourself, you're going to have to go eat out. You can't employ a cook. No. A driver, a maid, a butler, a dresser, a nanny, 3 secretaries, a personal assistant, lady-in-waiting, accountant, accountant's assistant, 2 gardeners, a flower arranger, and a dog walker? That's crazy. Okay, well, but what is this? Because the book goes on to say, an accountant was brought in to cut costs and asked one member of the staff what he did, and received the reply, I pick up the dog shit. And you? He asked, pointing to the person beside him. I help him. Golly, help yourself, man. What kind of a job is this? Can you imagine having 2 people to pick up the dog shit? I mean, this is insanity. Why does she want to live in a way that would only ever cause mounting stress? How are you going to pay all these people? I mean, how? I think the thing that surprises me is how has she been able to so successfully divorce her spending with reality? How is she able to go through life and not feel the pressure of owing all these people money she doesn't have? Like, I don't understand the ability to live so decidedly in a fantasy. I can understand wanting the fantasy that I could have all of these people and live like this, but how is it that she can continue to scam and scheme and spend money she doesn't have and it never bothers her? Not even a little bit, because she just keeps on doing it. The Duchess remained in denial about her debts, to put it lightly. According to a friend, I have heard her throw an absolute screaming fit when one of her staff showed her a letter from the bank. She just doesn't want to know. The tantrums kept staff turnover high. Car journeys are the worst, said one aide. She'll sit on the phone screaming at employees and reduce everyone to wrecks, and then she'll wonder why we are all so unhappy. That's what I'm saying. Delusion knows no bounds. A friend expressed concern about Sarah's behavior at social functions, which could often be a performance and inappropriate, but masked deeper insecurities. She assumes, quite wrongly, that she has to sing for her supper, so she tells dirty jokes. I have seen her among a group of people she has never met before, doing the fake orgasm sketch from When Harry Met Sally. The following morning she'll ring around seeking reassurance that she didn't make an ass of herself. Sarah, if you have to ask, you know the answer. That's a really awkward scene in that movie. I love that movie, but I hate that scene. It's very weird. Why did we do that? But can you imagine, in what context would you find that you could appropriately, and clearly it was inappropriate because his friend says it was awkward, but in what context would you tell yourself, you know what would be really funny right now? Is if I did that really awkward scene from When Harry Met Sally in the deli where Sally's acting crazy at the table. That would be hilarious. Like, I can't imagine in any social setting when anyone would appreciate that. Ever. How delusional are you about your own sense of performance that you would think you could make a scene from a movie that was already unbelievably cringy a success at a party with people you don't know? Wake up, Sarah. Wake up. I mean, it would seem that no one liked her because, as the book goes on to say, the Sun ran a telephone poll. Would you rather date Fergie or a goat? And 7-1 voted for the goat. No, that's terrible. It only gets worse, though. It only gets so much worse. This next section is entitled A Publication War. And when I tell you that Sarah has nobody in her life that actually cares about her, it's almost shocking. A publication war is about all the people who turned on her and used their association with her to make some money off of her back. Now, granted, she would have done the same thing to them. We know that. But, I mean, we're talking about her fortune teller. We're talking about her father. We're talking about Alan Starkey, a dear friend who she was also sleeping with. John Bryan, we already know what he's done. There's nobody in her life that wouldn't turn on her immediately if somebody offered them like $5. Madame Vasso, who, let me just remind you from the beginning of this book, when she started seeing Madame Vasso, her security detail was like, absolutely not. Dozens of times the police have been called to this lady's house for domestic situations, arguments with the neighbors. She's psychotic. Do not go to her. Go into her house and she would sit you under her little plastic blue pyramid and together you guys would go back in time to Egypt and she was going to tell you all of the things. Well, all she was doing was milking Sarah for all this information and then she's going to turn on her. This was a person who her security had tried to warn her about. But see, Sarah doesn't want to hear any of that. All she wants to do is have yet one more person tell her fortunes. Madame Vasso was first to publish on the Yorks. The opening serial extract of the healer's memoir, which Sarah had tried to stop, appeared on 30th September 1996 and focused on her sex life. Fergie, I taught prudish Andy how to make love. It was just one of numerous revelations from Vasso's book, and the 4-day serial was accompanied by a transcript of Sarah's taped conversations with the healer, in which she discussed her love life, financial woes, and her father, quote, the madman, who was himself revealed to have debts of £774,000, and who had also decided to jump on the publicity bandwagon and gave an interview to another paper about his daughter. The betrayals, you guys. John Bryan's friend Alan Starkey had also written a memoir, scheduled to come out at the same time as Sarah's own My Story, which she had been planning ever since her separation. Starkey's book threatened to derail her own book and was potentially even more damaging than Vasso's, as he knew her intimately. She had initially attempted to injunct it, but did not have the required £500,000 to put into court, and had also come under the pressure from the Queen, who did not want her to be open to cross-examination in the witness box. Her legal efforts cost her £200,000, and the publisher, Michael O'Mara, threatened to counter-sue for $2 million for loss of profits, saying she was using the English courts to keep the truth from the British people. She's publishing her own version of events, as vetted by the palace, in a few weeks. She, and perhaps the palace as well, have an interest in keeping the truth from the public. With so many revelations elsewhere, and after she had demanded a further £100,000 for an exclusive interview to run with the extracts of her own book, OK Magazine pulled out of a £500 serialization deal. At the beginning of November, Starkey's Fergie, Her Secret Life, began a 6-day serialization in the Daily Mail, for which the paper had paid £170,000. It appeared simultaneously with the serialization of My Story, Now and Hello. In his book, Starkey, who had signed a confidentiality agreement with the Duchess, described the rough sex she enjoyed with Brian, which once left her bleeding, and how the Texan had slapped her across her face after she ordered him to treat her like a tart, and the growing tension with Brian as she delayed divorcing Andrew. And yet, John still had some bizarre magical hold on her. After an attractive woman showed interest in Brian, Sarah asked him to marry her. Starkey rang to congratulate her. There was silence, and then, "What are you talking about?" When pressed, she paused. "Yes, I said something. Yes, I did say something, but I wasn't serious." Let me just pause real quick on this Alan Starkey. I hate him. Not because I hold so much love for Sarah. I think Sarah's a very destructive personality, but I also see Starkey as just as manipulative. This is a guy who was friends with John Bryan, then became Sarah's friend, then started sleeping with Sarah, then turns on her and writes all this stuff about her, and is revealing all these very intimate things about her. I'm sure she doesn't want people to know that she allowed her lover to treat her so roughly, even if in the moment she thought that she would agree to that because she thought this guy would like it. It's all disgusting and sick. I think there is a part of her that does like degradation, but she maybe didn't want everyone to know that. Though looking at her life, they could have figured it out. But back to Alan Starkey. I don't like him because I think hearing that Sarah had been offended that John was paying attention to an attractive woman and out of desperation had called him and proposed, that's embarrassing. And he knew that John obviously didn't accept. So for him to call her and be like, "Hey, congratulations, I hear you guys are engaged or you proposed or whatever," knowing the place that she was in, he just wanted to get the dirt from her, where she would admit, "Yeah, I said that, but I wasn't serious," or whatever. I don't like him. He was trying to make her feel embarrassed by what she'd done. It is embarrassing what she did. It's embarrassing that you would ask a man who's treated you so badly for so long to marry you when it all comes out of desperation because you were insecure that he paid attention to an attractive woman. And Alan, I think, was involved with her and was manipulative with her. And granted, Sarah was pretty rotten to him. This was the same guy that she said, "Hey, when you kill yourself, could you go tell JFK I want to marry his son?" Trashy behavior on both sides. But I just really resent these people who write stories about her and act like she was the problem child. And I'm like, dude, no. Equal issues here. That same month, my story was published in the United States with the first printing of 400,000 copies and interviews with Oprah Winfrey, Rosie O'Donnell, David Letterman, Larry King, and ABC's Diane Sawyer. Sarah told Sawyer that during her marriage she watched videos while Andrew had his way with 27 concubines. What? What? Like, at one time? At the same time, Delacourt Press published 2 new books from the Duchess aimed at 7 to 11-year-olds. The Royal Switch and Bright Lights, featuring 2 look-alike 11-year-old girls, Princess Amanda of Britain and Emily Chornack of Brooklyn Heights, which she dedicated to my best friends, her daughters Beatrice and Eugenie. Who, by the way, is over there going to buy a book from the Duchess of York about, 2 perky little 11-year-olds who just, switch places? Meanwhile, she's in the news for being beaten by her lover and being asked to be treated as a prostitute. I have to tell you right now, that would not be the first author I would run for my 11-year-old daughter. You know what I'm saying? However, it was a slick publicity campaign for which she was coached by a series of advisors. But the Mail was quick to challenge many of her public statements. The paper identified a number of claims she had made, which it said were not true. After she said she was gullible and naive when she got married, it pointed out that she had lived with a much older man when she was the age of 23, and rather than her being a good mother, Starkey's book had revealed her lack of emotional continuity, and her children starved of attention. She twice refused to answer questions on whether she had been unfaithful, denied that she had contemplated suicide, and claimed to be best buddies with Diana, and they had in fact been competitive and jealous of each other. Promoting the book, Sarah told Sky News, who had put her up at the Berkeley Hotel, she would not do the interview unless paid £20,000. The broadcaster responded by saying her blackmail attempt would be the lead item in the news if she refused. She agreed to do the interview but was not forthcoming. A BBC interview by Ruby Wax, watched by 12 million people, lampooned her as they toured Kingsbourne together, both indulging in psychobabble, highlighting the yellow labels identifying the drawers for various colors of T-shirts and a cushion that read, "Anyone can be a mother. It takes someone special to be a mummy." While the Duchess's Dalmatian ate Wax's bagel, the comedian was heard to exclaim, "Oh my God, even your animals have no self-control." Sarah's continued use of HRH caused controversy, as she claimed it had not been formally withdrawn. Royal lawyers quickly pointed out that she had been stripped of the title months before, through an announcement in the London Gazette. Buckingham Palace appeared outwardly relaxed by some of her disclosures, which included her belief that she was being bugged by the intelligence services, and that the palace had leaked her South of France holiday to the paparazzi to send a warning to Diana. But there was concern, the Sunday Times reported, that she may reach in her locker for one last bomb. The British Embassy in Washington was asked to monitor her public utterances, and the Queen took legal advice about her options to control the Duchess, including removing custody of her daughters and cutting her maintenance payments. The broadsheet opined, "It remains to be seen whether any amount of strenuous soul-bearing will seriously alter the British public's perception of the Duchess as a willful, spoilt, and stupid young woman who has caused the royal family unforgivable grief." Writing in the same paper, psychiatrist Anthony Clare took a longer view. He felt Sarah was psychologically adrift and suggested the departure of her mother during her childhood had led her to don a devil-may-care mask. She attracted and became attracted to a circle of similar on-the-make, ambitious, insecure losers, histrionic con men, greedy women, quick-fix merchants, and meretricious phonies. She may not possess the true strength of character, but even the psychiatrist could not deny her talent for survival. Her U.S. trip, however, appeared to have been a commercial success. It was reported that she had signed a $3 million Hollywood deal for her own series of shows, based on Annika Rice's TV hit, Challenge Annika. In the show, Special Adventures with the Duchess, she would become a gondolier, trek through the deserts, climb glaciers, and perform dangerous stunts, alongside celebrity guests. It would air the following year as Adventures with the Duchess. Duchess is spelled, weirdly, Dutchess. I don't know why they misspelled it, unless they're playing off the fact that Diana used to call her Dutch. I don't know. Anyway, thanks to her performance promoting her memoir, which reached number 3 in the U.S. charts, there were suggestions she could be offered a U.S. talk show contract 5 days a week, worth $12 million per annum. But the idea came to nothing. Market research showed that many Americans found her accent hard to understand, and showbiz stars, among them Madonna, Steven Spielberg, Bruce Willis, and Demi Moore, were reluctant to be interviewed. Sarah's meeting with founder of Weight Watchers earlier in the year had, however, borne fruit. She was now a size 10, and it was announced she'd become the public face of the slimming organization, of which she had been a member age 19, in a deal worth £500,000 over 3 years. One of the terms stipulated that she must stay under 10 stone. Andrew had also managed to lose weight, dropping from 15 to 13.5 stone in 2 weeks on a crash diet of 600 calories a day, consisting of stewed prunes for breakfast, raw vegetables for lunch, soup for supper. Sounds bleak. He was now dating a 29-year-old BBC researcher, Henriette Peace, a former model and a close friend of Casey Neville, whom he had met briefly when she worked at Buckingham Palace in 1987. After they met again at a London party thrown by a mutual friend, there was instant chemistry, according to one guest. A naval friend of the Duke said that he was really fallen head over heels for her. "I've never seen him so happy." The Duke had been desperately trying to keep it a secret, but according to the source, his friends all knew, as did the London social set. The couple realized it was going to come out, but they were trying to keep everything under wraps as long as possible. Andrew had not taken her to any restaurants or parties, instead resorting to cloak and dagger stuff, meeting up with her when he could. It didn't last. After 6 months, the relationship with Peace would come to an end, in the summer of 1997, after she felt continually sidelined in favor of his ex-wife. Andrew had chosen to go to Tuscany with his family, rather than take Peace to Barbados. Well, we must end here, my friends. Must go make breakfast with the family. Am I surprised that things are going so dreadfully for both of them in the divorce? Hardly. Because they live their divorce the same way they live their marriage. Weirdly attached to each other, and both of them dramatically trying to destroy their own lives. His career in tatters. Her life continues to fall apart. All of her friends betraying her. All of his... And I just can't imagine what a pain in the neck it would be to have family members who are like this when you are already on such a huge stage. The queen, with all the things she has to deal with, can you imagine so much of your time being taken up with the shenanigans of this red-haired devil? I could not even deal with it. The rage and the fury that I would feel at having to deal with this maniac that my son had brought into the family. And even he had kind of written her off. Like, he's off kind of doing his own thing, popping in when he feels like it, saying hey to his kids from time to time. But, like, he's able to write it off in a way the queen can't write it off because her name is attached to this complete and total tornado of chaos. Yet somehow Andrew seems to be able to be like, well, mother, I've got to go back to work, But her work is trying to control this lady. The way I would call that boy in and dress him down. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that reading. I'll see you guys tomorrow for another episode. And we'll just keep on plugging away. This book is fabulous, and I hope you're enjoying it. All right, see you soon. Bye.